Before I start, I'm going to tell you about development services and what it entails. You will see a lot of similarities with the Lloyds Bank. I think the story that those guys told was really interesting as well. And it's nice to see that we're actually dealing with the same type of issues. Now, before I start, I see the SBB guys are not in yet, but it's actually quite funny because they told the story about the Sweden and Swiss similarities. I'm from the Netherlands, and I always get confused by Germany. And that's because people think that we speak Deutsch, but we actually are Dutch. So I'm from the Netherlands, Amsterdam, and so I quite had to laugh at that as well. The other thing that people usually first think when they see me on stage, I hear that people already thought it, that's nice. I actually was in a cab yesterday and someone told me, did anyone ever mention to you that you actually look like that famous painter? So yeah, about 1,000 times. I actually shaved my beard last week because I had sort of, let's say, also what he had down there as well. So I'm actually not Bob Ross. I've heard that a lot over the previous years. But my name is Jim. I'm a chapter area lead within ABN AMRO Clearing. And what that basically means is that I'm responsible for all our development teams in Europe. What ABN AMRO Clearing is, I will also explain in a minute, but I've been working here for about 4 years. I have an IT engineering background, so I've been developing a lot. I say here former IT engineer. I speak for us all, I think, if I say that if you are once an IT engineer, it never leaves your blood again. But I would be giving myself a bit too much credit if I still say that I develop too frequently. I try to do it 4 hours a week. Doesn't always work out, but I'm still very enthusiastic about the engineering culture. And I've personally been working together with Red Hat since 2021. Now, to give you a bit of context of ABN AMRO Clearing, because in Europe we're quite known, outside Europe we're not so much known. We actually do 3 things. We provide market access for our customers, and market access you can think of, for example, to exchanges. Our clients used to trade a lot, and because our clients are usually not positioned all across the world, we actually provide them the market access to be able to trade stocks, ETFs, for example. The second thing we do is we create trust by clearing those transactions. So, for example, if one of the 2 parties would go bankrupt, we as ABN AMRO Clearing will actually make sure that the other party will either get the stock or the money in return in case something goes wrong. Third, we also provide liquidity to our clients, also to use, for example, for trading. I'm not sure how popular it is in the States, but in the Netherlands we have quite a few professional trading groups, so to say, or maybe the Flash Trader group might ring a bell as well. Those are the clients that trade on the very marginal differences across exchanges across the world. They're very intelligent people, and they do that a lot, so they have a very small margin per transaction, but because they do it very frequently, they still earn quite a lot of money. So to say, they live by the volatility in the market, and I think I don't have to tell you that the markets have been quite volatile in the past few years. I won't say the C words down here, I think we're done with that by now, but you know what caused it. Those people, maybe a small anecdote as well, they have been actually living in tents in the office for 24 hours just to keep on trading because the markets were so volatile. Just something to consider if you consider a job change, might be something to be interested in. Now, what do we do? Those 3 points also come with a global context. ABN AMRO Clearing, as I will show on the next slide, is a global company. We have offices all around the world. And from an IT perspective, that of course also always brings complexity. The other part, the speed part, is also very important. As I mentioned, we have a lot of flash traders also as our clients, and they trade on the microseconds difference. So if we don't keep up with that as well, and if we can't cope with that, they will move to a different provider. So we also have to keep us on top notch on technology too. Now, as I mentioned, ABN AMRO Clearing is a global company. We also have 2 offices in the United States of America, not in Boston. But who knows, it might even come. We do have an office in Chicago and New York. Our head office is in Amsterdam, and here we have a total FTE of 1,100 if you count externals as well. So it's not a huge company, but still nicely sized. For the ones who know the Netherlands, I'm actually from Rotterdam and not from Amsterdam. And those who know the Netherlands a bit, there's always a large competition between Amsterdam and Rotterdam. But we actually won the Dutch National Soccer Cup. So if there are fans from Amsterdam here, I'm sorry, we won this year. That only happens once every 15 years, so please let me be happy for this year. As mentioned, we provide market access to about 150 exchanges, and we process about 5.8 billion transactions a year, which might not even sound a lot for a lot of the technology companies, but of course those 5.8 billion transactions lead to tax, lead to billing, lead to a lot of extra data points that are connected to that. Now, we are in a leading position. We are the #3 largest clearer in the world, which we're quite happy with, but we can't be complacent in that. And one of the largest, well, let's say, risks, if you're doing well, money is flowing in, then you might sit back, relax a bit, and wait for your competitors to keep up, and then you're suddenly out of business. So that's something we really can't do. We have to keep on moving, but we are a bank after all. And I saw some of you laughing already. It's not really how our legacy systems work. It's not too far from it, but it's close. Some of our core systems date from back to the 1980s. People who are, I wasn't even born yet then. But we have indeed some colleagues who have been working here for quite a while. And well, for the people who do know it, we're running still on DB2, the I-series from IBM. I know there are a few IBM people in here as well who probably can tell far more about it than I can. But we have to, keep up. We have to keep on innovating. Now, what our problem is that we're quite complex. As I mentioned before, if you're looking at our offices, we have one in Chicago, we have one in Amsterdam, we have one in Sydney, and those are our main technology hubs. All of those offices have different levels of maturity in engineering. They use various programming languages, and also they use various different platforms. So you can look at VM-based applications. We are using OpenShift quite a lot already. Well, I say quite a lot, but we will see in a moment. And we're also discovering moving towards AWS. And we're also, of course, checking ROSA for that as well, but that's still in the very early stages. Now, with that global complexity, we have security teams demanding various measures. And of course, because we're global, those differ also per region. We have governance teams and compliance teams also asking us the same. So there are a lot of different requirements that we have to keep up with in order to keep compliant and secure. Now, as I mentioned before, there is a lot of different technologies being involved in modernizing. The platform team is trying to support all of those different languages. Being an IT engineer myself, former IT engineer, I try to know that developers can be quite demanding. And I think I heard it in a previous talk as well. We all know best, and we all want to use our own thing to keep on doing what we know best. But that's from a standardization perspective, maybe not the best way forward. Another problem in this whole is also the learning curve. Because we have so many different technologies that we want to work with, onboarding a new engineer, it takes a lot of time and effort to get someone productive. And I think, I hope I'm not alone in this, but when we onboard a new engineer, it can sometimes take up to 3 to 4 weeks before he or she actually does her first commit to a Git repository, which is quite painful, and we're trying to improve that process, but it does give you a picture of where we want to move to. Now, if you're looking at our platform adoption timeline, we started our early talks quite long ago, if I may say. We started in 2016 by determining AWS as our next target platform, so to move from VMs towards AWS. Now, we quickly found out that AWS can't be the sole provider because we have a lot of proprietary data that can't be moved towards the cloud, at least not in 2016. So we got into touch with OpenShift as well, with Red Hat, and that was determined as our second target platform. Now, interestingly, it took us, I think, nearly 1.5 years to get our first production workload, which is not even that bad. But it took quite a while until we actually moved on with our next production workload. And for AWS in 2020, as you can see, about 3 years later, our second production workload went live, and that's not even too long ago. Now, after that, something interesting happened, because by 2023, about 12% of our crown jewels are now live on OpenShift globally. A crown jewel is, for our definition, I'm not sure if it's a common term, but our crown jewels contain our most important applications worldwide. So, for example, the core banking system, the payment system, the settlement systems, that sort of stuff, the risk systems as well. So in this specific period, something interesting happened because we suddenly saw a ramp up and in a lot of new applications being onboarded to OpenShift. Now, if we look a bit closer to what happened, if we get our number of percentage of crown jewels onboarded to OpenShift and our time, we see, that should be 12 by the way, we see that a large portion of new applications was onboarded directly after something happened. And that was the introduction of our development services team. And I think if you're looking at the Lois presentation, I think it was 2 presentations back, it's a similar concept. So what we try to do is actually get away with the complexity or get the complexity away from the IT engineers by actually doing a lot of stuff for them. What you saw happening before is that you always have the first movers, right? And the very technologically advanced people that want to move, that are really enthusiastic about new shiny stuff they want to touch, they will move. You don't have to be concerned about them moving. They will want to touch everything that's shiny and new, so they will go. That's what you saw with the first workload being live and the second workload being live. But afterwards, we saw that a lot of people in the organization had trouble with making that same move. Could be, for example, due to regulatory deadlines they have to meet. There's not always a choice to make that move on the short term. So what do you then? You have to make it easier for them to make that move and actually reduce the complexity for them so it's actually easier to make that move. Now, herewith, the introduction of development services. And I say this like this is something, a prophecy that I just invented. Of course, it's not. But I would like to talk to you a bit more about how we did it and also show you a bit on the practicalities that came with it. So our development services team sits right in between our product teams and our platform teams. Globally, we have about 44 development teams and 10 platform teams. The development teams on the top side, so the product teams, they are really truly global. The platform team resides in both London and Singapore because that's where we have our data centers. Now, what we see happening that the development service is trying to do is reduce the complexity from the platform teams towards the product teams. Hopefully, leading to a lower cognitive load, a higher consumability of that platform, automated compliance and security. I think one of the most important parts, because we talked about people a lot today, happy engineers, and also easier onboarding for engineers. We see that the teams already making use of the development services stack generally are doing their first commit after 3 days after being onboarded to the company. So that really makes sure that it really shows that making use of that development services stack really pays off. Now, how do we do that? We connect the platform and product teams, but also security, governance, because those are usually, and also in our company, different teams with different requirements. They thrive in standardization. For maybe a very good example, the IDE is of course also a very touchy subject usually. We don't actually standardize on IDE. So developers are free to choose if they want to use the JetBrains stack or Visual Studio Code or anything else, that's all fine. But everything after that is actually standardized as much as possible. I will show you some examples in a bit. And we create golden paths for developers to consume. So those golden paths are sort of the standardized way of working. If you use that, you can do your commit in 3 days. If you don't do it, it might require a bit of more engineering for yourself. So the more senior engineers will most likely just get away with it, but the more junior engineers coming in can make use of that golden path to really get up and running very quickly. Now, to get a bit more practical, I've selected 2 use cases that we've automated within ABN AMRO Clearing over the past few months, which is why you saw the huge increase in velocity of onboarding new applications. The first one is the new developer joining the company. Now, automatically, as soon as the HR systems see someone joining, a joiner ticket is created. And that joiner ticket is just a very simple ServiceNow ticket that shows, okay, who is the joiner, what's his or her email address, what is his or her function. So we have some basic information. Now, as soon as that person joins, he or she is able to select a stack. And that stack makes a big difference in the process later on. The development stack can, for example, be Python, Java, C++, really on a language based. And based on that, he or she can select an IDE preference. Directly after that, ServiceNow will send a message to our workflow integrator and create the most basic setup possible. When that happens, the most basic stack is selected, right? So email, Jabber, Slack, or Teams. That's a discussion that I will leave for later. Telephone, laptop request, I mean, the most basic stuff is done. But where the value comes from is actually the next step, and that's the auto-customization of the work environment. With that stack selection and with the tools, the IDE selection, most of the default settings actually get implemented straight away. So the lint settings, the company coding standards, the credential creation in CyberArk, and also the Nexus repository connection. Most of the companies I've worked with in the past don't allow, of course, the direct connection towards the outside world. So if you want to do a pip install or npm install, they don't usually go to the outside repositories because they're generally unsafe, at least from a security point of view. So what happens if a developer, a junior developer just joins, they've learned in university to do a pip install, that doesn't work because the connection gets refused, and they lose another 2 or 3 days to find someone to tell them how it actually works. So this kind of stuff, having that automated in your workflow when a new developer joins, really saves a lot of time. The second part, related to OpenShift as well, is actually when a new app has to be onboarded. That also goes directly through ServiceNow. In ServiceNow, you open a new ticket created with all the necessary information to make it happen. The platform is then automatically provisioned with the namespace, with everything required to start a new project. And additionally, and I think this is also a very important step, within the Git repo that the developer has requested the new project, all the credentials are also automatically stored as a credential in both OpenShift and all the workflow providers like Jenkins at the time. That means that it's very easy for a developer to start either you working on a new app or working on existing apps at the same time, creating value much faster than we were able to do before. If there were 2 things to take away from this presentation, the development services team is responsible for most of the things that I just mentioned. So the development teams make sure that there are default components to work with. They build the workflows from ServiceNow towards OpenShift, and they are responsible for making sure we have happy engineers. So the platform team has one team to talk to, which is development services. The product team also has one team to talk to, so they can also create some standard practices to work with. The second point, and that's always a touchy subject, because platform engineers are, of course, also engineers, and they also want to be happy. I hear some laugh here, okay. I truly believe platform engineers also want to be happy. And sometimes it's really easy in that way to lose your actual customer out of sight, right? Because the actual end customers are the application teams that want to develop on your platform. So it's really important to keep, let's say, talking to your development services team or to your product teams to see if you're still meeting their demands. And that's it. So thank you very much. And if there's any questions, feel free to walk by later. Thank you.